The kitchen at Forward Operating Base Valor smelled like every military mess hall in every war zone. Industrial coffee, powdered eggs, and the faint metallic tang of water purified too many times. Maria Santos stood at the serving line, ladle in hand, scooping scrambled eggs onto plastic trays with mechanical precision. She smiled at each soldier who passed, a small, practiced smile that never reached her eyes. She nodded when they said thank you. She said nothing back. 8 months. That's how long Maria had worked the breakfast shift without speaking more than a handful of words. The soldiers assumed she was shy. Some thought she didn't speak English well. Others figured she was just another local hire, grateful for the job, happy to stay invisible. They weren't entirely wrong about the last part. Specialist Danny Morrison slid his tray down the metal rails, his uniform still crisp from the morning formation. He was 19, fresh from Georgia, and still treated every meal like it was his grandmother's Sunday dinner. "Morning, ma'am," he said, flashing a gap-toothed grin. "Those eggs smell great." Maria's smile flickered. She nodded once and filled his tray. Danny waited a moment, hoping for conversation, but she had already turned to the next soldier in line. He shrugged and moved along. That was Maria, quiet, dependable, forgettable. Staff Sergeant Kyle Brennan wasn't as polite. He slapped his tray down hard enough to rattle the silverware. "Hey, cook," he said, loud enough for the soldiers behind him to hear. "You ever gonna learn to talk, or you just gonna stand there like a statue?" Laughter rippled through the line. Maria didn't flinch. She scooped his eggs, added toast, and gestured toward the next station. Brennan snorted. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Silent treatment. Real professional. She let him walk away. She let them all walk away with their jokes, their assumptions, their casual cruelty. It was easier that way. Safer. The moment she opened her mouth, the moment she let her real voice out, everything would change. And she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Captain Linda Hayes watched the exchange from her table near the corner. She was the FOB's executive officer, second in command, and she made it her business to know everyone on base. But Maria Santos was a mystery. Her file was thin, hired through a contractor, passed the background check, no red flags. Just another foreign national working support services. Hayes had tried to engage her in conversation twice. Both times Maria had smiled, nodded, and returned to her work without a word. Hayes made a mental note to ask the intelligence officer about her. Something didn't sit right. But then again, a lot of things didn't sit right in this place. They were 70 miles from the nearest city, surrounded by hostile territory, operating on a razor's edge. A quiet cook was the least of her concerns. The morning shift ended at 1100 hours. Maria wiped down the serving line, restocked the napkins, and swept the floor. The other kitchen staff, 3 local men and 1 American private, chatted in broken English and Pashto, a mix of jokes and complaints about the heat. Maria moved around them like a ghost, present, but never part of the conversation. When Private First Class Jenkins asked her a question about the inventory, she pointed to the clipboard hanging on the wall. He sighed and went to check it himself. She finished her work and stepped outside into the blinding Afghan sun. The FOB was a fortress of concrete barriers, guard towers, and razor wire. Helicopters thumped overhead. Humvees rumbled past, kicking up dust. Soldiers moved between buildings with purpose, always armed, always alert. Maria walked along the perimeter path, her worn sneakers crunching on gravel. She liked this time of day. Quiet, empty, a brief window where she could breathe without being watched. She passed the motor pool, where mechanics shouted over the roar of engines. She passed the medical tent, where Corporal Sanchez sat on a bench bandaging his hand. He waved. She waved back. No words. Just acknowledgement. That was enough. Her quarters were in the contractor housing, a row of plywood boxes with thin mattresses and thinner walls. She shared the space with 2 other women, both interpreters who spent their evenings watching Turkish soap operas on a laptop. Maria didn't watch with them. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, and counted the hours until the next shift. But tonight was different. Tonight, there was a briefing. Captain Hayes stood at the front of the operations center, a dimly lit room filled with radios, computers, and maps covered in red circles and arrows. 20 soldiers sat in folding chairs, notebooks open, pens ready. Maria stood in the back, near the door, her arms crossed. No one had invited her. No one had told her to leave either. Hayes clicked through a slideshow on a laptop. Satellite images appeared on the screen. Compounds, roads, mountain passes. "Intelligence suggests increased activity in Sector 7, she said, her voice clipped and professional. "We've intercepted chatter about a coordinated attack. Timeline is unclear, but we're treating this as credible. All patrols are suspended until further notice. Base security is elevated to Condition 1. Murmurs spread through the room. Condition 1 meant imminent threat. It meant sleeping in full gear, weapons loaded, ready to move at a moment's notice. Sergeant Brennan raised his hand. "What's the target, ma'am?" "Us or the supply convoy?" "Unknown," Hayes admitted. "Could be both. Could be neither. We're preparing for everything." Maria's eyes moved across the map on the screen. She recognized the terrain, the roads, the compounds. She had walked those mountains once, years ago, when she wore a different uniform and carried a different name. Her jaw tightened. She knew this area better than anyone in the room. She knew where the ambush points were. She knew which villages provided safe harbor to insurgents. She knew the attack wouldn't come from Sector 7. It would come from the south, through the wadi, at dawn. But she said nothing. She just turned and walked out, her footsteps silent on the concrete floor. The attack came at 0547 hours. The first mortar round hit the eastern guard tower, shearing off the top half in a cloud of fire and shrapnel. The second hit the motor pool, flipping a Humvee onto its side. By the time the alarm siren wailed, the base was already under siege. Maria woke to the sound of explosions. She rolled off her bunk, hit the floor, and crawled toward the door. The other women in her room were screaming, clutching each other. "Stay down!" Maria shouted. Her voice was sharp, clear, command-toned. They froze, staring at her. She didn't wait for questions. She kicked open the door and ran. Outside was chaos. Soldiers sprinted toward defensive positions. Smoke billowed from the eastern perimeter. Small arms fire crackled like firecrackers. Maria moved low and fast, her eyes scanning for cover. She had no weapon, no vest, just her kitchen uniform, faded pants, and a stained white shirt. But her body remembered how to move. Muscle memory took over. She zigzagged between buildings, using walls for cover, anticipating the next explosion before it came. The command center had taken a direct hit. The roof was partially collapsed and flames licked at the edges. Captain Hayes staggered out, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead. She clutched a radio in one hand, shouting coordinates, trying to organize the defense. But her voice was weak, her words slurred. She was concussed, disoriented, losing control. Maria grabbed her by the arm. Hayes spun, ready to fight, but stopped when she saw who it was. "Santos?" she gasped. "What are you—" "Give me the radio," Maria said. Her English was perfect now. No accent, no hesitation. Command presence filled every syllable. Hayes blinked, confused. "You can't— now." Something in Maria's eyes made Hayes comply. She handed over the radio. Maria keyed the mic. "All units, this is Valor Actual. Cease independent movement. Consolidate to secondary defensive positions. North and west perimeters hold. East and south fall back to inner ring. Acknowledge. Static." Then voices, one by one. North perimeter, acknowledged. West perimeter, acknowledged. Medical, acknowledged. Sergeant Brennan's voice crackled through. "Who the hell is Valor Actual?" Maria ignored him. She scanned the battlefield with tactical precision. The mortars were coming from the south, Just as she had predicted, small arms fire from the east. The enemy was trying to pin them down, create a kill zone, then breach the southern wall. Classic insurgent tactics. She had seen it a dozen times before. "Brennan," she said into the radio, "you still have the .50 caliber on Tower 3? A pause. "Yeah, but redirect fire to grid Alpha 7. Enemy mortar position. Sustained burst. Do it now." Another pause. Then the heavy thump of the .50 caliber machine gun echoed across the base. Seconds later, a distant explosion. The mortars stopped. Maria moved toward the southern wall, Hayes stumbling behind her. Soldiers stared as she passed. The quiet cook. The woman who never spoke. Now she was giving orders like a seasoned commander. Specialist Morrison appeared, rifle in hand, his face pale. "Ma'am, what do we—" "You're with me," Maria said. She grabbed an M4 from a fallen soldier, checked the chamber, and slung it over her shoulder. "We're going to hold the south wall." Morrison followed, too shocked to argue. The southern wall was concrete and sandbags, reinforced with wooden beams. 4 soldiers crouched behind it, firing wildly into the smoke. Maria dropped beside them. "Cease fire," she ordered. They looked at her like she was insane. "I said cease fire. You're wasting ammo." "Who are you?" one of them demanded. "Someone who knows what she's doing. Now listen. They're going to try to breach in 3 places. Here, here, and here." She pointed to weak spots in the wall. "We're going to let them think we're panicking. Then we're going to funnel them into a kill zone. Understood?" They didn't understand, but they listened. Maria organized them with brutal efficiency. 2 soldiers to cover the flanks, 2 to hold center, Morrison to relay communications. She took the forward position herself, rifle raised, eye to the scope. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate dropped. This was familiar. This was where she belonged. The insurgents came through the smoke, 30 of them, maybe more. They moved in a wedge formation, rifles raised, confident. They thought the base was broken. They thought the defenders were in disarray. They were wrong. Maria waited until they were 20 meters out. Then she fired. 1 shot. Center mass. The lead insurgent dropped. She shifted, fired again. Another down. The soldiers beside her opened up, following her rhythm. Controlled bursts. Disciplined fire. The insurgents scattered, looking for cover, but Maria had already anticipated their movements. She called out targets, adjusted fire, coordinated overlapping fields. It was surgical. It was brutal. It was over in 90 seconds. Silence fell. Smoke drifted. Maria lowered her rifle and exhaled. "Perimeter secure," she said into the radio. "Casualties?" Captain Hayes's voice came back, stronger now. 3 wounded. None critical. Santos, I need you at the command center. Now." Maria stood, handing the rifle back to one of the soldiers. He stared at her like she was an alien. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer. She just walked away, leaving them all wondering. The command center was a mess of overturned tables and shattered screens. Captain Hayes sat on an ammo crate, her head bandaged, her eyes sharp despite the concussion. Major General Richard Carver stood beside her, a silver-haired man with a chest full of ribbons and a face carved from stone. He had arrived by helicopter 20 minutes after the attack, demanding answers. Now he had found one. "Maria Santos," he said slowly, reading from a tablet. "Or should I call you Captain Maria Santos? Delta Force. 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Mogadishu, Baghdad, Kandahar, 12 years of service. Medal of Honor nominee. Classified operations that make my clearance level look like a library card." Maria stood at attention, her kitchen uniform stained with dust and blood. She said nothing. "You were declared KIA in 2011, Carver continued. Ambush outside Kandahar. Your entire team was wiped out except you. Only survivor. Burned. Broken. They pulled you out and put you back together. Then they gave you a choice. Retire with honors or disappear. You chose disappear." Yes, sir, Maria said quietly. Why? Hayes demanded. Why hide? Why work a mess hall when you could be training operators, consulting, writing your own ticket? Maria's eyes stayed forward. I needed to be near soldiers, ma'am. Needed to serve, but I couldn't do the work anymore. Couldn't carry the weapon, so I carried the ladle instead. Carver studied her for a long moment. You saved 200 lives today, Captain. Coordinated a defense that should have been impossible. You did it without rank, without authority, without anyone knowing who you were. That's not service, that's sacrifice. It's just who I am, sir. No, Carver said. It's who you were trying not to be. But you can't hide from yourself forever, Captain. Today proved that. Maria finally looked at him. Are you ordering me back to active duty, sir? No, Carver said. I'm asking. We need people like you, not just fighters, leaders, teachers, people who've been through hell and came out the other side, still willing to serve. Maria was quiet. She thought about the kitchen, the silence, the safety of being no one. Then she thought about Morrison's face when he realized she knew what she was doing. She thought about the soldiers on the south wall, who had followed her because she gave them something to believe in. I'll think about it, sir, she said. Carver nodded. That's all I can ask. The next morning, Maria stood at the serving line again, ladle in hand. Eggs scooped onto plastic trays, but everything was different now. Soldiers lined up, and when they reached her, they straightened. Some nodded, some said thank you with weight behind the words. Sergeant Brennan stopped, met her eyes, and said, Ma'am, just that. Respect in a single syllable. She smiled, a real smile this time, and for the first time in 8 months, she spoke. You're welcome, Sergeant. Specialist Morrison approached last, his tray trembling slightly. Captain Santos, he said, I just wanted to say, I know, Maria said gently. You did good yesterday. Be proud. He nodded, blinking back tears, and moved along. When the breakfast shift ended, Maria didn't clean up and disappear. She walked to the command center where Captain Hayes was waiting. I'm in, Maria said. I'll help train. I'll advise, but I stay here, on this FOB, with these soldiers. Hayes smiled. Welcome back, Captain. Maria nodded. She wasn't sure if she was ready, wasn't sure if she'd ever be whole again, but she knew one thing. Silence hadn't healed her. Service had, and maybe that was enough. True warriors don't need recognition. They need purpose. And sometimes the quietest person in the room has fought the loudest battles. Subscribe for more untold military stories of sacrifice, courage, and silent heroes who serve without seeking glory.